Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
Or it's happier for some of us.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Rough day.
Yeah.
Rough night.
Rough start. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
we're being champions and showing up and doing the thing.
Sorry.
It's a pretty full thing. We got a lot of stuff going on in our home and our family, and so there's some extra stuff.
Yeah.
That
I'm trying to get myself together this morning to get going on the stuff.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah.
So let me kind of get us kicked off here. Got a couple things. First of all, we've got observance of 9/11 today, somber occasion, and
that's
so it's been many years.
The thing.
Yeah,
I remember that. It's funny because there are certain points in history that people remember where they were and what they were doing. Those that were alive with JFK's assassination is one of them. First man on the moon, another one. 9/11's another.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually have something teed up. I want to do a moment of silence here before we get into our actual topic. But for the moment, I just wanted to give a couple of mentions. We've got the Marietta event starts this Sunday. That'll be Sunday through Tuesday, I believe, in Atlantic City. So for those of you in the Northeast or from anywhere who want to hop on a plane,
or drive.
Tommy Brandis, who's the executive director of Marietta, told us that all dealers could attend. So So just be aware that that's happening, and it's not too late to get out there and join those folks in Atlantic City.
Yes.
And then we have LHPH conference coming up on October 2nd through the 4th. That'll be in San Diego. So for those who are in LHPH or are contemplating lease here, pay here, that would be a good opportunity to get out there. And
policy conference coming up too.
I don't have those dates. I know that's happening.
It's the end of the. It's pretty soon.
Is it
here? Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
Okay.
So policy conference for those of you guys that are going. You get to hobnob and rub shoulders with your senators and congressmen, or some of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep.
I doubt that they can get all 50 states worth of stuff.
Obviously, your directors are there. A lot of your leadership within NIADA, and of course the lobbyists who are engaged by NIADA are there. So an opportunity to meet directly with them, and as you said, the legislators.
Yeah.
It's an uncommon opportunity. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So what else we got? And then those of you who want to do not the super forum, what are they calling it?
The dealer forum.
That's coming up in November. So
I don't have those dates either, but
that's another big one.
I think that's New Orleans this time. So that's happening as well. So how about we do our moment of silence before we go forward, and I want to observe the occasion. Yeah, and when I do this, I have a kind of a special request for those who are sitting in. If you view in the screen, we've got an image there of the Twin Towers, in flames. And so I think as we contemplate that, I just wanted to ask our viewers to take a moment to, as we pause, I would ask you to, first of all, reflect on that somber occasion, but also remind yourself of the kind of collective patriotism that we all felt. Oh my goodness. Right? Yeah. And so I think, this is an opportunity to kind of challenge folks in this moment of silence to think back to what that patriotism felt like, and ask, what it is that keeps us from, being able to experience that. Obviously, traumatic things bring us together.
Unite it. It's something that everyone is experiencing at the same time. And it unfortunately, but it unites people because they have something in common.
Sure.
And so there were a lot of, it was like a time of patriotism, a time of more compassion for each other.
So the question really, as you take this moment of silence, is ask yourself, what makes that evaporate? Why do we go back? Granted, it's a it's a traumatic thing, but just ask yourself what keeps us from returning to some level of patriotism, and kind of that collective understanding that we're we're kind of all in this together.
So as we observe this, let's not think about all the things that happened after that created more division, but just remember what it felt like to be united.
Right. Let's start our moment of silence now. Thank you. Thank you for indulging us on that. So just wanted to observe that thing. You know, each year it seemed like it becomes less and less real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it
It's now
does.
been 23 years.
It does.
Or something,
And,
so.
you know, I think that one of the things that I reflect on is how fortunate
Mhm.
we are that war does not land on our borders.
Yeah.
That's
Has
that's the first time since the Civil War,
Mhm.
or the actually I think it's the Mexican American War. That war,
Okay.
because it wasn't the Mexican American, yeah, that war has been on our borders,
Okay.
and that's an aggressor has
Right.
been on our borders,
Sure.
and we're really, really fortunate because that, you know, there's a lot of right now. There's a lot of conflict out
Mhm.
there, and people, their homes
Mhm.
are not safe. I remember one of my closest friends. Her name is Nairi, and she is Armenian and lived in Iraq because it's just I wish I understood it more. They were Christian Armenian, were pushed out of Armenia, lived in Iraq, in Baghdad, when the war started, and she, you know, she was over at the house the other day, and we were sitting downstairs on the patio, and there was a loud boom, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, did that frighten you or whatever?" And she's Michelle, I was a teenager, and all we ever heard was boom, and you just get used to it, and you tone it out, and so, you know, I can just imagine those that are in Ukraine and in Israel and Palestine and other places where they are experiencing war.
Right.
That no one should have to go through that.
Yeah.
No one should have to live through that. No one should have to be so numb.
Yeah.
That they don't
Right.
notice. So.
Well, the unfortunate reality is there always be conflicts and
Oh,
misunderstandings.
absolutely.
So
Okay.
so enough about all that
Yes.
somber conversation. I think we can move
Yeah.
on to our topic of the day. And this is something that, you know, we've talked about this in the past. Our subject for today is, you know, solving the problems with education and buy here, pay here. And of course, that extends to lease here, pay here in a similar way. But it's like the buy here, pay here side. I think what prompted me to kind of bring this back around is we've talked about this in various ways in the past. Okay. Is this idea of, you know, how do you get education into the hands of more people? And I think first you have to stop and just define. I think one of the problems becomes sometimes is what is education? I mean, what are we calling education?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny. As I stepped in to help you, and we started going to conferences and meeting with people and talking to people, primarily vendors are the ones giving education. And when we would talk to vendors about that, they didn't want to touch the newbies at all.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's like, that is not something that we want to start coaching, consulting, whatever, the newbies, the people that are brand spanking new in the industry. And it's like, they didn't want to go there. It's like, give them a year, give them a whatever. And then we can talk to them. And so it's the avatar for Jim when I met him, and it's shifted a little bit, but was primarily brand new dealers,
Right.
and dealers that didn't know what questions to even ask.
Yeah.
And that was a topic that all in like the national associations and they're having a hard time getting to them
Mm-hmm.
and finding them. And so, it's like, go to the conference, go to the conference, go to the conference, but not everyone can go to the conference. And so people have not been able to get education
Right.
that's convenient for them. But yes,
Yeah, I think when you think about education, I'm just
Mhm.
trying to figure out it. And I've had conversations. Listen, it's hard to talk about this stuff without thinking about people who might feel, like this is some sort of accusation or, I mean, it's kind of a thing where people have different views on this. And I think the reason that I think I know that Michelle and I are entitled to a voice on this, that we
To
have
have
the
an
right,
opinion on it.
that
Yeah.
we have the right to speak
Yeah.
up on this. I looked before we hopped on this morning, Michelle. We've done 355 episodes of the Buy Here Pay Here
And
Morning
it's
Show,
free.
and there's no
And
sponsor.
there's no sponsor,
Right.
and it's accessible to everyone.
Sure.
And there's within that is much of
Mhm.
what you teach
Yeah.
brand new dealers.
Yeah, that's true. And I think,
Mhm.
but if you don't make it even about us, and if you just think
Mhm.
about the segment that is Buy Here, Pay Here, and you think about this idea that there maybe, and let me just tell you, I'm bringing the subject around, and traditionally when we've done these kind of topics, we get almost nobody tunes into these particular subjects, and
Yeah.
that's okay. I mean, if it turns out that dealers, because what I'm really today speaking to dealers,
Mhm.
and if dealers say they're okay with it the way it is,
Mhm.
and they don't see a need to change anything,
Mhm.
then we can move on and leave it alone. But that's
Yeah.
not what I'm hearing from dealers in our own
Well,
circles.
well, first off, shout out to Butler Sanchez because they have education out there that's free. It's just, you just pop
Sure.
in there. And so there's
Good.
pieces of education that are free. And also a shout out to there are vendors that have like, we really want to see education get to where it needs to go. I mean, I totally get that. What has made me question whether or not vendors are the only ones that can give good quality education
Mhm.
is how many people have reached out to us to want to be mentors. And so it's like there are really great operators, there are really great experts, there are really great that want to be able to teach and want to be able to mentor and want to be there for dealers of smaller sizes or whatever and be able to give some of which is very much the same energy that you have and that you've brought to this, where it's like, I've been a dealer, I know the stuff that is hard.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it doesn't mean that I have all the answers. I
Mm-mm.
just often know where to find the people, and I certainly know a lot of the stuff that dealers wrestle with early, right? Trying
Yeah.
to figure out, where do
Yeah.
I find this information? So, I just think in the description for the broadcast this morning, I talked about that there's so much to learn in this industry, and the price of not knowing those things, the mistakes that we can make in the buy here, pay here space can be so expensive that I'd love to obviously help dealers avoid that. And so part of my work is always trying to help mitigate risk and help dealers identify
And you do
the
it every
hazards.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
We do it on the
Yep.
podcast, and we obviously do it directly with dealers. But I think
Mhm.
if you take it outside the moment, because I think it's not to say that the model that we have had for decades, all the time I've been around the automotive segment, the model that has been in place, it's not to say that it doesn't deliver some useful education. That's not what I'm saying. I'm more saying, couldn't we do more and reach more people with an education platform or what? And obviously you and I have our own kind of solutions, but the bigger thing for me is just kind of, if we think about, take it out of Jim and Michelle, take it out of any one vendor in our industry and just say, how should we get education to dealers? Because traditionally the model has been, you go to these conferences. That's the primary place that you go to get education. But you and I have been to conferences. I was going to conferences way back when I first started, and participation in those tends to run, I would guess, in the 2 to 3% range.
Of
Almost of
dealers.
dealers
Yeah.
are going to be in
And
attendance at a
and we've
physical event.
talked about that's like it's the golden 500 for the most part. It's those that have been able to be reached through other conferences, dealers talking to dealers. I mean, it's just like there's been really very little um very little ability until, social media really started up, but very little ability for a vendor to find a dealer or for a dealer to so
And there will
yeah.
always be a
Mhm.
place for
Mhm.
in-person interaction and education, and like the upcoming dealer forum is outstanding. I think when you look at the whole sort of, generally it's often referred to as pay to play, right? It's like this idea that you're paying for a spot, and if you look at the roster of speakers, you have to ask yourself how many of those speakers that are presenting information are also in the exhibit hall as a vendor now or sponsor. So it doesn't, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm simply saying it's incomplete in terms of who it's going to reach. And I think, as a dealer myself, back going to and as a manager before that, sitting in the workshops, they're often presented by, some vendor who has a product for sale.
And
Doesn't mean that there's not good education in there, but you kind of have to pluck the education
one
out
of the things that I see is that the solution to the problem they're talking about is them.
Often that's what happens.
That's very frequently what these it's education through here's all the problems,
Right.
and here's your solution, and that they're on the top of the list as solutions,
Well, then
or
that
the
makes
only
sense.
solution.
And let's go through the math. Like let's just go through the business that is, an organization, of an association, of trying to put on these events. These hotels are expensive.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
They spend a ton of money to get there, and they're counting on a certain amount of participation from dealers. Now, the vendor support is critical, right? Without the vendor support currently, because the alternative is to charge dealers, and they already have a low participation, right? And so it's like it makes sense that you're going to have to support that sort of machine through vendor support.
But does having a booth in an exhibit hall or being a higher level sponsor buy you the right to be the presenter?
Traditionally, that's been the model. I mean, people would say,
because it really skews what people are seeing then.
It does. The dealers know that. Dealers are not naive, right? They know when they go in a room that, so-and-so is, the CEO or whatever, or business development for so-and-so, whatever. Again, it doesn't mean that the education is not valid.
Yes.
Okay. That's not what we're saying. I'm simply saying that when that's the education that is presented, it's incomplete. Okay. And this is not about Jim. It's not just pick other coaches, educators across the industry. Like, where would you go find the best people to speak to that particular subject? Period. Like, even if they retired dealer who has no products to sell, like who would be, the people who could provide and deliver the best education. So that's one element, is like the actual workshops that are presented and what kind of information we put in front of dealers. I think generally speaking, the dealers that I talk to, it's hit and miss. It's like sometimes you talk to a dealer and they say, yeah, it was money well spent. I'm glad I came, learned a few things I'm going to take back to my dealership. Wonderful. That's what you're looking for.
Says an awful lot when like I remember TIADA a couple years back that they had signs in the hallways that said, if your teacher is pitching their product, call this number.
Right.
Because I think that a lot of the associations recognize that is a problem.
Yeah. And look, again,
and dealers complained about it too.
Yeah. I'm saying though that I also see that if I'm a state association, it costs money to put on these events.
Yeah,
and
it does.
And I'm simply saying, okay, so you stay with that model and you keep having, vendors maybe do your education. I just think that doesn't address the thing that, at best, even if all those dealers that we talked to, as they exited the conference, they said, yes, it was great. I got good value, got good education, something actionable. You're still only talking about 3% of the dealers at best. And so now how do you reach the others? Do you care to reach the others? I'm saying we just want to try to find solutions. Now, you got to monetize it. You can't, you got to
Yeah.
get something for your time. I mean, you and I obviously, with all the time that we give to education, we give that freely with nothing. We don't expect anything in return. People get to know us.
Well, I mean,
that,
heck, you've even spoken most conferences that you speak at. It was just a more recent thing that you even put your phone number up there.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm not here. I don't have a booth.
Yeah.
I haven't paid to be here. I'm
Right.
here to teach.
Sure.
I do
In
have
fact-
a product, but
in fact,
I'm here to teach.
We pay our own way. We pay our expense.
We pay
to be
our
there.
own. That's one of the reasons why we don't go to conferences, because it's time and money that comes out of our own pocket.
Sure.
And it's just like,
And
we want to teach. And this is a great platform for us to be able to do that. We get to,
Absolutely.
People can find us and the audience continues to grow. But
sure. And it's obviously in this environment, you're going to have to be kind of generic. You're not going to be specific to somebody's situation. But on that subject, I do have kind of a little aside. I heard from a dealer in Arkansas Monday after our broadcast, asking some very specific questions.
Oh yeah,
about
this is happening more and more and more and more, isn't it?
And so the reason I bring that up, is because I've asked for his permission to share his name. I want to bring the follow up to that Monday. I recorded the answers to him specifically because I knew that others were going to have the same questions. So I recorded that yesterday, and I look forward to bringing that to the podcast in the future, because it's an example of when we give specific education and there's no ask to buy anything. There's no, we're not selling anything in that way. So we're just educating freely because so let's talk about why for a minute. Why do you and I give this time to the education? So, as I said, we become known. Of course, we have a coaching company. And so, of course, we become known through this channel, right? And we hope we build credibility in that. We also, it helps us to be known in terms of that one of the areas was pretty evident about credibility that we've gained here that we can now utilize on behalf of dealers is the White Hat Way portfolio summary report that we've requested of all DMS providers. The response has been incredible, and we continue to work through that. You're going to see some of those dealers. You're going to see some of the DMS providers coming through and finishing that. Some of them are back and forth with us now and putting the finishing touches on it. But you will have that. So it's an example of where we can utilize our collective, whatever you want to call it, a collective sort of credibility that and we're trusted by many dealers. That's just clear. I mean, you haven't seen the survey results coming back from our V8 dealers, but the level of trust is high. So that's wonderful. That's what we've been working to do, is to earn trust. And just one of the ways you do that is make deposits. So we talk about that often in terms of a dealer earning the trust of their community. One of the ways we're doing is earning the trust of our community is by just making deposits and just educating and offering this stuff freely. But even this, our YouTube channel, we don't promote it. There's no SEO. We haven't paid for any SEO.
Oh my gosh. Every time we start talking to someone, we get, and it's like people go nuts. It's like, you haven't done any of the stuff. It's like, we know we're busy. And we're just busy. It's
what you would do. You would spend money to create SEO if your real objective was to monetize, right?
Of course we need to pay the bills, and of course, all of that. But our real objective is to help dealers be better.
And I have one additional motivation on my side. And we're sitting here on a White Hat Wednesday talking about, if you think about what White Hat Way is meant to be and has become, is it's helping to create solutions first through education to be able to allow dealers and their customers to be more successful. We talk about reducing the friction between buyers and sellers, in this case, buy here, pay here dealers and their consumers who finance with them. But there's also just this idea that we're going to sort of infuse some level of trust between sellers and buyers. So that's what White Hat Way is now, working to achieve. And so this is another example of when we come here and talk about how do we get education into the hands of more dealers. Now, vendors are welcome to
Uh-huh.
support that effort. We're
Uh-huh.
not saying vendors shouldn't be a part of it. They obviously have a lot of their own expertise and they have things that they can contribute. What we have to be mindful of is that the trust that has been established can be diluted
Mm-hmm.
if we create, and we see it, Michelle, when we do surveys, and we see the dealers say, yeah, I don't want vendors in the meetings.
Well, and we're asked
Mm-hmm.
a lot. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to and with the morning show, we had multiple vendors approach us and say, we want to sponsor, we want to sponsor, we want to
Mm-hmm.
sponsor. And we were like, no,
Mm-hmm.
not going to do it. And it's we're trying to figure out, because I think I have two comments here, and I think they might be from the same person, but
Mm-hmm.
one from YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
Rudy E.
Yeah.
Issue is that they have salespeople who do not know the products that well, in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay. And then the other, Rudy.
Rudy, probably the same Rudy.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with helping people and making money. And
That's true. And I think the other thing that comes to mind, in that context is like when we're out there educating. One of the problems that we have in the buy here, pay here space, unlike sitting up here and doing a podcast for Ford dealers, is that not everybody does business the same in the buy here, pay here space. Like these strategies vary, right? So the best we can do in educating, especially through a channel like this, is to provide fundamental, foundational education that would be relevant to any dealer. But also what I try to do is aim at, regardless of how the dealer chooses to do business, pricing, underwriting, regardless of how they choose to do any of those things, I'm trying to provide them the key pieces of information I think that would be helpful for them in making those decisions about how they want to do business, right? So this is part of and this thing I did with this dealer in Arkansas yesterday is an example of that. It's like, I'm just trying to bring information that is, I think, relevant and helps dealers make judgments for themselves, because I want them to remain fiercely independent.
Oh, absolutely. 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 And one of the things that those of you who have been following us for a while, the morning show is basically something on the track of Buy Here, Pay Here Nation television. And we've had multiple events on that Buy Here, Pay Here Nation television track. And that's where it's like, instead of an expo hall, that we ask vendors, put together a commercial.
Right.
And we will show your commercial to people, but it's like, it's so if and that's been something that we've been like, how do we make this work? Because we want to keep products like the V8 clean. And so it's not where you're going to come and you're spending your time getting pitched. It's like, getting pitched should be optional.
Here's what I can tell you. Our V8 dealers have nothing to be concerned about, because we're going to follow their wishes. Like, we're going to do whatever it is that they would wish to do. And so far what they're telling us is they don't want vendors.
They don't want to be pitched during
And I don't, it's an intimate setting. It's a great place to be able to introduce somebody to, but that's not what we're doing. Those dealers are paying for that service. And so when they're in that room, they're there to, and so let's go back to the definition of education. So I've said this in the past, and I think this is probably an unpopular view, but you know what, Michelle, the older I get, the less I concern myself with being popular. So
me too.
It's like, so the unpopular view part of this is that I think you have to define what is education. And I personally don't think of a V8 peer format
is not education.
I don't think of it as education. And I think that's some of where this problem
comes from. It's dealer services. It's like, this is a service. And because you're not educating, well, there is the newbies, and that's kind of, that one is education.
But and they pay the same price. And we just told them when they step in, look, it's this particular format, because you guys don't have numbers to really compare to in the same way. You don't have enough data to really be meaningful. So we do more coaching over there. But I think the point is, with a peer service, you're putting dealers together, and is there learning that happens? Of course, they're learning from one another. But that's not the way I would define education. To me, education would be kind of in the context of training someone, standing in front of a room, standing in front of a camera, delivering education,
Mhm.
delivering training that is going to be
Is
relevant.
coaching is, you consider that education?
It's another service, but the problem you have with the reason I wouldn't, you can put under that umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
but coaching is never going to reach
Well,
the numbers of dealers that I'm
yeah.
talking
Well,
about.
I kind of think that it's something that you've said many times before, that education is different than peer groups. It's just
Yeah.
it's a product. It's
Mhm.
not an education. It's not teaching. It's a
It's a means of
product.
dealers learning from one
Yeah.
another, but I think
Yeah.
my own definition of education as
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's been an educator for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, and I've done, we've done all the stuff before I was ever doing
Mm-hmm.
podcasts. We were going to events and be asked to come and do presentations. And so, we're just out there coaching and teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that scenario, because that's what we're asked to do. But I think that's the part that is interesting. And look, this doesn't have to be Jim delivering the education.
Mm-hmm.
Dealers can decide, and they can take surveys and decide what education is valid and useful to them. That's up to them. But I think what I'm really saying is just, what's the mechanism? So this is why I say, because today it wasn't about the problem. I mean, you can keep rehashing it. Still, thing about, I love the thing from a management perspective is when you're just pointing out problems without offering solutions, you're just complaining.
Uh-huh.
And this is not meant to be a complaint. This is meant to begin to identify the problem in a way that allows us to carve out the best possible solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm suggesting to you today is we've got to find, and obviously for us, that's going to be virtual delivery. That's going to be online
Mm-hmm.
education in order to reach these folks who are
Yeah.
outside that golden 500
Well,
that
and
attend the events.
that's something that we are seeing, because we have, and this is just, call to vendors too out there.
Mm-hmm.
We talk to, and our audience is much larger than the golden 500.
Right.
And so, we survey dealers that are coming into V8 or questions, and it's like, are you a member of your state association?
Mm-hmm.
And that number is growing of people that are not.
Right.
And so if they're not, then they found us as education and are like, I'm thirsty for education.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part to that is that most dealers that we talk to don't have the time or the resources to go to a conference.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next part of that is many dealers that go to a conference, it's like fresh blood in the water.
Yeah.
And it's very, very off-putting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, you do one or two, but it's like, I don't know about you, but when I go to this, the people try to reach and it's like, just looking,
Sure.
because it's just, it's fresh blood in the water.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't know what the answer is for conferences. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that conference attendance, may go up, but there's a lot of people out there that we're still not reaching,
Mm-hmm.
and that there is a massive percentage of those,
Right.
massive percent, because you were saying the golden 500. That's how many percentage? Yeah. There's a massive percentage of dealers out there that don't have the time or the resources to go to a conference. And so that's what, let's get people education, get things in front of them.
It also bears mentioning that there's a massive percentage of those dealers who really aren't seeking education,
mm-hmm.
right? They
mm-hmm.
just kind of think they got it figured out, and they're brave
mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs, and they're just marching ahead and kind of figured it out, and they're willing to make
mm-hmm.
those mistakes and pay those prices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. You'll never reach all of them. I'm simply saying that when you get to the place where you've got the ability to get that stuff in front of more people, because the other problem that you and I see in social media, look, especially the younger generation, they're going to go to YouTube and Facebook and ask the questions,
mm-hmm.
and they get some good answers. It's just the problem becomes, and this is where, what is the definition of education? Like, who really is qualified to offer the best, most comprehensive
mm-hmm.
education and most useful, like verifiable, education, because you'll go to social media and you'll see a dealer ask a question, young dealer.
This is why we've got Steve Levine coming on the show next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday. And Jim and Steve, those of you guys who know, Steve I've got his book right here, Winning the Fight. And it's from Ignite. He does Compliance Unleashed, where he's an attorney. And so go ahead.
Yeah. So a week from Friday, this coming Friday, we have Ben Clifford come and talk about cash flow. The following Friday, we have Steve Levine. And by the way, we need to make sure our viewers who are tuned in know that we're dropping Mondays.
I can wait.
We're just doing 2 podcasts
Squirrel,
a week until further notice.
Okay. So back to
the thing about the thing is you're not going to reach all the dealers. And when you go to social media, there are a lot of dealers in there, but they'll ask a question and they'll get answers from both sides.
150 different answers. It's like as many responses there are is almost as many different answers as there are.
And everybody loves their own answer.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason. But what you don't know is the rest of the story about how they do business and how much experience they've got in the business and a lot of those kind of things. So sometimes people are getting, there's no shortage of information over there. The problem is knowing which advice to follow.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is why when you talk about education, and obviously all of this is being said in September of 2024, when you've got Brent Carmichael is going to take the helm
of over education and just really have a lot of respect for him. There was another comment, Rudy, and I get this. I get this. And this is something that we talk about frequently. Value of those conferences isn't really the classes as much as it is meeting dealers who are in the trenches trying to get better. Nowhere in that sentence did he say vendors.
Yeah. And so the meeting other dealers, and that's generally true, that dealers, you'll sit at a lunch table and meet another dealer and talk about this and that, which is part of the value of the event that's coming up in New Orleans. I think people generally had great things to say about that. And we love it. That's a wonderful format. That particular event will have 1 or 2% of the dealers at best that will attend.
And
so
it's the same dealers. It's not that so often. Yeah.
It's not that it's not valuable. That's not what we're saying at all. It's just that it's not reaching the masses.
And those dealers that come that attend these frequently, they they do gain. There's new stuff and they get better, because there are some dealers that understand that when you go and you learn and you get new things and the connection. Because in no way are we saying don't ever go to a live conference at all, because there is education, and there is that one piece of connecting with other dealers, meeting new dealers, having the lunchroom table conversations when you just go find a seat somewhere with people that you don't know. And then the conversations is, as you get going, it's just that's so stinking valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the expo hall just for a minute, just to make sure people know. The other reason I would say go to the expo hall, and in addition to the thing that Rudy mentioned, networking and chatting with other dealers and learning a little bit that way is useful. Going to the vendor hall and the expo hall is highly useful if you're a dealer who's ready to make a software switch and you want to go meet the software people and look at the demos. There's no place else you can really go that you're going to have a chance to sit and view those people, view the demos, meet the people in person, and that kind of thing. And then you may discover a solution in the expo hall that you had no idea existed. There's just so many things, so many tools and technology and things out there now that if dealers don't get there and stay on the cutting edge, then you run the risk of being behind. Now, if you're in that golden 500, then maybe you're saying, I like being in the golden 500. I like being only the 1% that goes over there and gets the education. It gives me a tremendous competitive advantage. No doubt. No doubt. You learn and you stay up to date and you stay compliant, and that gives you a tremendous competitive advantage. We certainly get that. I'm simply saying one of the things that I want to do for the remainder of my career is continue to work to get education in the hands of more people who will never set foot in a conference hall.
That's that's one of our driving goals, is to be able to do that. And we are doing it. We are doing it. And then finding new, as we develop new ways for that education to reach the masses. And it doesn't have to just be our education.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
Not
it's
at all.
just there's so much good stuff out there, but negates everything. There's so much good education out there, and there's a huge need for people to be able to access it on their own time, at their own pace, at their own need.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just going to this and this and this, the conferences or whatever, or going to a live webinar or that kind of stuff. Is it that dealers, we recognize that dealers are busy, and we recognize that dealers don't have, especially when you're newer, that it feels like, even though we know that it's a worthwhile investment to invest in your education, but it feels like I'm barely making ends meet. And so, because you're on that hamster wheel. So we are working really hard, and we invite others that are educators to, it's like, let's collaborate, let's create, let's find a way that we don't have to create island and island and island and island, and that we're saying that we're the best and we're or whatever. It's just like, let's do this thing. And that's one of the things that we're working on creating. We talked about it bazillion years ago, and we can only do so much at a time, but it's still there.
Sure.
Is the platforms and the whatever for dealers to be able to find the stuff, and be able to easily access the answers to their questions from people that are credible mentors or educators.
Yeah. So let me hit folks with a couple of adjectives. I think as we move forward, then I think what people can expect to see out of us is, first of all, let me just say that Michelle is very smart. She's learned a ton about buy here, pay here in the few years we've been working together in this industry. I have 20 plus years of going all over the country and working with buy here, pay here dealers. But guess what? Michelle and I don't know it all when it comes to buy here, pay here. There's more stuff to know. There's more stuff to learn, and we can continue to work to do that.
And we're learning stuff every day.
And we can bring stuff. We can bring experts. We never have to know it all.
Yeah.
We just have to know the people.
Well, and it's the more dealers you talk to, and the more dealers you work with, you learn something new. It's like, well, there's another way to do it that works, and there's another way to do it that works.
This week. In fact, Rudy, who's sitting in today, he's one of our V8 members, and he has the best questions. He's been in the independent retail business, and we got a couple of dealers that remind me of Rudy, where they bring they're smart, and they have their own business experience, and now they're asking the right questions, I think, and when it comes to buy here, pay here. So back to the adjectives. Going forward, I think what you can expect to see is that we're going to be collaborative. Oh yeah. We're going to be creative. We're going to be generous. We're going to be generous with the education that we bring, right? And so I always pride myself in being creative, and we're going to continue to be trustworthy, that you can trust that we have dealers' interests in mind. We are, and just, for all of those out there in listener land, we are like always looking for people to collaborate with, because there is so little sense. It's nonsensical to try to recreate a wheel. Yeah. Doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all. It's very inefficient, and it's in time, money, all of the things. And so we are in a very collaborative, open to that. The one is it's kind of like I was just thinking about when we found this house that the landlord, because we weren't planning on being here for more than 9 months, he's like, there's 2 rules. No pets, no smoking. And it's like, okay. Well, there are, we collaborate, but again, we ask that your solution not be the only solution too. And that through collaboration, that people are able to choose and, make educated choices on where they want to go and how they want to do things. And so we're not going to be creating things that have one end road. Right. There's different
pieces that it's like, well, we do this, but this is what we need.
Right.
And we do this, but this is what we need. And it's like this, it has to lead to our product. And that's a problem for us.
That's not really education.
That's not. That's well.
Sales funnel.
That's and that's that kind of like full circle back to what we're talking about. Is it when education becomes a sales funnel? That's a problem.
Yeah, and can it still deliver some value? It can, but it's diluted. And
okay, and let me
is
say
in
though that
question.
we have this podcast, and yes, I guess you could call it a sales funnel. So let's be honest. I mean, the podcast, I guess, could be called a sales funnel. We're educating, but it's like, yeah, you can go and talk to this person, or you can go and talk to this person. You can engage this person or this person. But I mean, yeah, it does.
Listen to our podcast for more than 20 minutes and then come back and answer the question whether we've created a sales funnel.
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to really pay attention.
It's just, to me, it's one of those things that I watch. It's like, okay. When we go to conferences, that's to me like, we think frequently about our government and lobbyists and how that makes things dirty or kind of crunchy or just murky.
Michelle's got a new word, crunchy.
Crunchy.
So you might have
Crunchy's
to explain
like,
that to her.
It's like, oh, when you move,
Doesn't
it's like
feel
crack,
good.
crack. It's not right. There's something not smooth about it. And I would say that there is a similarity between lobbyists and government and vendors and conferences education. So that there is something that's kind of crunchy about it sometimes.
Okay.
And
Well, I think your perspective is relevant. Somebody who's been outside the space.
Yeah.
And you have a kind of a different dog in the fight, so to speak. But, it's like Michelle says, of course, we make our living in coaching. That's, obviously how we pay the bills. I think what we're really just saying is going forward, take it away from Jim and Michelle for a minute.
Yeah.
Don't make it about Jim and Michelle. The question is, how do you get education into the hands of more dealers? Useful, credible, trustable education. And this is what we're really just trying to do, because I think it also serves the consumer when we do that. When dealers can learn to get more efficient in their business, potentially charge the consumer less, the consumer becomes more successful. This is part of the math that we're bringing forward and trying to help dealers see that maybe we can get more efficient in these areas, and we can, when we perform better, we're going to serve more people. We're going to have more successful customers who repeat, and send referrals and all the kind of stuff. So this is the part that, where my work is, I want to move past opinions, folks. I just want to move past opinions. And what you get in social media is a lot of opinions that aren't tied to anything factual. And if you want to make your business decisions based on that, and you get what you kind of get what you deserve there. So I think we ought to just put facts in front of people and let them make their own decision. And so this is kind of what we're working.
So, and then the other element in that is facts, and it's also funnels. And so recognizing as you're being educated by vendors, and that can be us as well, is the education leading only to one solution?
And is it validated?
And is it validated?
Is somebody standing up spouting opinions and suggestions? Or
and the whole thing that Rudy was talking about with salespeople and stuff, and I get salespeople oh my goodness, when I worked in the tech space, we had to keep things a secret from the salespeople because it was just like they were off selling the thing, and it's like it's not even out of framing. And so they're promising this and they're promising that and they're promising the other, and it's just like, stop. We shouldn't even talk about these things, but they want to see something shiny and all that kind of stuff. But I forgot where I was going, because I was just remembering what that felt like. It was so frustrating with and it's that where I was going was what we have seen is that sometimes salespeople get a little too aggressive and just make shit up.
Yeah.
It's like we got there was a conference a little while ago that we got a message from a vendor, and then the competitor that was at the conference was saying that vendor was going out of business.
Mhm.
And that's what they were telling everybody, is they're
In
going
the-
out of business.
in the room, like
in the
presentation.
room, the
Right.
salespeople were. Danger Will Robinson.
Right.
It's like, is it
That's how
credible?
people get sued.
That's how people get sued. And that the vendor that was said they're going out of business immediately reached out to us,
Mhm.
and they were like, this is not true. And
Mhm.
we weren't at the conference, so we couldn't hear that.
Mhm.
But the problem was that vendor was not represented.
Right. Right.
And so it was this word against this thing. And and it's like, and not every vendor wants to attend every conference, and that doesn't mean that they so
I think most folks are going to see
Yeah.
through negative selling when
Yeah.
when we're standing in front of and bashing a competitor. I think most people are going to see
Yeah.
through that. So I think
I hope so. Yeah,
I think,
so.
credibility suffers as a result, and,
Yeah.
and people tend to pay the price for that sort of thing. So,
Okay.
it kind of works itself out, but we don't want to see anybody get sued. We don't want to see false information being thrown around, right?
That's absolutely true.
So
I think that we've pontificated enough.
it feels like it. I think it's time for a nap. It's time for my Wednesday nap.
Oh my goodness.
It's a fun idea. I don't think.
I would love a nap. Didn't sleep well last night.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on Wednesday. It's our White Hat Wednesday, and listening to us chat about the things that matter to us.
Yeah.
And on Friday,
Benjamin Clifford is going to come and talk about cash flows
Dealer.
and specifically how to measure and manage from cash flow and balance sheets.
Right
Okay.
on. All right.
Yeah.
So everybody have a great Wednesday, and we will see you back on Friday and talk some more about cash flow. Thanks again so
Enjoy
much
the
for
rest of
joining.
your week.
Thanks.